Edit Vittorio de Luca's hand froze over the pill bottle when the young nurse said, "Those numbers don't make sense." The private recovery room occupied the quietest corner of his Manhattan penthouse, all dark walnut, polished stone, and medical equipment expensive enough to disappear into the furniture. A heart monitor whispered beside the bed. Somewhere beyond the glass walls, an elevator chimed, and one of Vittorio's guards crossed the marble hallway without speaking. Elena Marini stood beneath the warm pool of a reading lamp with his chart open against her forearm, the faint scent of antiseptic clinging to her navy scrubs. Vittorio watched her over the rim of his glasses. At 57, he could silence a room with one look, move millions of dollars before breakfast, and make men twice Elena's size reconsider the wisdom of disappointing him. None of that mattered when she opened the section of his medical file he kept folded behind 3 other reports. "Close it," he said. Elena did not. Her thumb stayed pressed against the page. "Your blood pressure is stable. Your sensation testing has improved. Your nerve response is better than it was 6 months ago." I said close it. The monitor kept its soft electronic rhythm. Elena lifted her eyes. She had worked in the penthouse for 11 days, long enough to understand that Vittorio never repeated himself unless someone had already crossed a line. She crossed it anyway. "And I'm saying your current symptoms don't match what this report predicts." Vittorio removed his glasses and placed them carefully on the nightstand. The gesture was more controlled than anger, which made the 2 guards visible through the open doorway straighten almost imperceptibly. Elena noticed. She shut the door herself. Vittorio's gaze sharpened. "You do not close doors in my home without permission. Then fire me." The words landed cleanly between them. No tremor. No apology. Elena set the chart on the table beside a glass of untouched water. "But if I'm responsible for your recovery, I'm not going to pretend I didn't see something because the subject embarrasses you." His jaw tightened. 2 years earlier, a bullet had damaged nerves. Near his lower spine, he had survived surgery, infection, months of rehabilitation, and the humiliating dependence of needing strangers to help him stand. He had learned to walk again. He had learned to command meetings from a cane, then without one. But one specialist had told him there were things his body would probably never recover, and Vittorio had treated that sentence like a verdict. No dating, no companionship, no woman close enough to discover what he considered missing. He had reduced his life to business, loyalty, and locked bedroom doors. Elena reached for the medication organizer. "Did you take the evening dose?" "I know how to swallow a pill." "That wasn't my question." He stared at her. She waited. Finally, Vittorio picked up the glass and took the tablets. Elena watched the movement of his throat, then checked the time on her watch and wrote it down. Professional. Calm. Infuriatingly unafraid. "Why does this matter to you?" he asked. Her pen stopped. "Because you hired me to help you recover. I hired you to manage pain, mobility, and medication. Your body doesn't divide itself according to what makes you comfortable discussing." The silence that followed had weight. Vittorio looked toward the dark window, where Manhattan glittered 30 floors below like another empire he could control from a phone. "That part of my life is finished." Elena's expression changed only slightly. Her shoulders lowered. Her voice did too. "Did you decide that? Or did someone decide it for you?" Vittorio turned back. "Careful. I am being careful." She picked up the hidden report again. "This says permanent dysfunction was considered likely 18 months ago. It does not say recovery became impossible. And the medication you're still taking can interfere with the very function you were told you'd lost." For the first time since she entered the room, Vittorio did not answer immediately. His fingers tightened around the water glass until a thin line of condensation ran over his knuckle. Elena flipped to the prescription page. One drug had been renewed every 90 days. Same dosage, same physician, same assumption. She looked from the bottle to the report, then back to Vittorio. "Who has been managing this prescription?" His face hardened. "Dr. Samuel Harlan." Elena knew the name. Everyone at the private hospital did. Harlan had treated Vittorio since the shooting and had spent 20 years inside the De Luca family's trusted circle. Elena turned the bottle slowly under the lamp, reading the label twice. Then she set it down with deliberate care. Vittorio watched her. "What?" Elena met his eyes. "I want your complete medication history, every nerve study, and the original surgical notes." "You already have enough." "No." She pushed the bottle toward him. I have enough to know I don't believe the story you were given. Vittorio's voice dropped almost to a whisper. What story? Elena placed one finger against the date on the prescription. The one that convinced you your intimate life was over. For several seconds, only the monitor spoke. Then Vittorio reached across the table, took the locked medical folder he had refused to surrender for 2 years, and slid it toward her. Read everything. Elena opened it. Halfway down the first page, her eyes stopped. She looked at the medication bottle again, then at the man who had built his entire future around one diagnosis. Mr. De Luca, she said quietly, who told you your body would never recover? Edit Vittorio did not answer Elena's question until the condensation beneath his water glass had spread into a cold ring across the walnut table. Harlan, he finally said. The heart monitor whispered behind him, steady and mechanical, while Manhattan burned gold beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Elena remained beside the table with the medical folder open, but she did not turn another page. Dr. Harlan gave you the prognosis personally? Vittorio's mouth tightened. 3 months after the shooting. I was walking with braces then. He told me the nerve damage might improve enough for mobility, but that intimacy was another matter. Elena closed the folder. And you never asked anyone else? The question changed the room. Vittorio rose too quickly, one palm catching the table when his right leg stiffened. The glass trembled against the wood. Elena instinctively stepped toward him. Don't. She stopped immediately. No reaching. No pity. Vittorio straightened without her help and crossed toward the windows, each step controlled, the faint drag of his right foot audible against the stone floor. You think because you've been here 11 days, you understand what happened. No, you think I was too proud to get another opinion? Elena watched his reflection in the glass. I think you were told something devastating while you were still learning how to stand. His shoulders went rigid. That is not an answer. Neither is pretending it didn't affect your judgment. Vittorio turned. The city lights cut hard lines across his face. I spent 8 months having strangers move my legs. I needed help getting out of bed. Men who had obeyed me for 20 years watched me grip parallel bars like an old man learning to walk. Elena's fingers tightened around the folder, but she stayed silent. When Harlan told me what I had lost, I believed him because I needed one person in that hospital to tell me the truth. His voice remained quiet. That made the admission heavier. So I accepted it. Elena set the folder down. Accepted what? That there would be no woman. The words came without drama. No marriage. No waking beside someone and wondering whether she stayed because she wanted the man or because she felt sorry for what remained of him. Elena's breath slowed. 11 days of clipped orders, locked doors, and medication schedules suddenly rearranged themselves into something she could see. Vittorio had not merely stopped dating. He had built his entire life so no woman could ever stand close enough to reject him. She stepped toward him, then deliberately stopped several feet away. I don't pity you. A humorless smile touched his mouth. You're paid not to. I'm paid to provide nursing care. Disagreeing with you is apparently unpaid overtime. His eyes flickered toward hers. For half a second, something almost warm passed through the silence. Then Elena picked up the folder. I want a second opinion. No. Independent neurologist. Independent rehabilitation specialist. Full medication review. No. Then I can't continue pretending. Your treatment plan makes clinical sense. Vittorio stared at her. Are you threatening to quit? I'm telling you my limit. She removed the identification badge clipped to her scrub top and placed it beside his pill bottle. The plastic clicked softly against the table. If you want someone who follows instructions without questioning them, hire someone else tomorrow morning. His gaze dropped to the badge. Elena's name sat beneath her photograph in blue hospital lettering. And if I agree, then you let another doctor examine everything. Not because I promise you'll recover something. I can't promise that. She held his gaze. Because you deserve to know whether you buried part of your life before it was actually gone. The refrigerator unit inside the medication cabinet hummed into the silence. Vittorio looked at her badge for several seconds. Then he picked it up, crossed the distance between them, and held it out. Elena took it, their fingers stopping an inch apart without touching. Make the appointment, he said. She blinked. You're serious? Before I change my mind. Elena clipped the badge back onto her scrubs. Vittorio turned toward the window again, but his reflection betrayed him. His eyes followed her as she gathered the records. One condition, he said. Elena paused. This stays between us until I know what's true. Medical confidentiality already guarantees that. That isn't what I mean. He faced her. If the answer is the same, you never look at me differently. Elena studied the man standing beneath the amber light, powerful enough to command almost anyone around him, and suddenly asking one young nurse for something he could not order. I can't agree to that. His brow tightened. Why? Because I already look at you differently. Vittorio went completely still. Elena did not soften the words or rescue him from them. She lifted the folder against her chest and walked toward the door. Behind her came his voice. Elena. Her hand stopped on the cool brass handle. Tomorrow morning, Vittorio said, bring me every record you need. All of it. She looked back. He had spent 2 years protecting the one wound no guard could defend, and now his locked medical cabinet stood open behind him. And find me a doctor, he added, who has never heard the name de Luca. Edit by 9 the next morning. Elena had transformed Vittorio's recovery room into something he disliked almost as much as weakness, a place where he was not in control. Pale winter lights spread across the walnut table, illuminating stacked medical records, medication printouts, and the black folder he had kept locked away for 2 years. The espresso beside Vittorio had gone cold. Elena's smelled freshly brewed, though she had barely touched it. Again, she said. Vittorio stood between the parallel rehabilitation bars, sleeves rolled to his forearms, his right hand gripping brushed steel. You're enjoying this. Immensely. That was sarcasm. So was mine. Elena crouched beside his right leg without touching him. 10 feet. No cane unless you need it. I want to see what happens when you stop anticipating the weakness. Vittorio looked toward the guards outside the glass doors. Elena followed his gaze. They can leave. They stay. Then stop performing for them. His eyes returned to hers. She had learned something important during 12 days in his home. Commands rarely moved Vittorio as effectively as challenges. He released the rail. One step, then another. His right foot dragged slightly on the fourth. On the sixth, his knee threatened to buckle. Elena moved forward, but Vittorio lifted a hand. Don't. She stopped. He steadied himself, breathed once through his nose, and completed all 10 feet. When he reached the opposite rail, Elena checked her stopwatch. Better. You sound disappointed. I'll try to look devastated. The corner of his mouth moved before he could stop it. Elena saw it. So did Vittorio. The almost smile vanished, leaving an awkward stillness neither of them had encountered before. Elena looked down at the stopwatch. Sit for 5 minutes. I'm not tired. Your hand is shaking. He looked at his fingers around the rail. They were. Vittorio sat. Elena handed him water instead of commenting, and that small mercy affected him more than sympathy would have. She never celebrated ordinary movements as though he were fragile, never praised him for surviving, never lowered her voice around the parts of his life he found humiliating. She simply expected him to participate in getting better. The independent neurologist can review your records this afternoon, she said. Vittorio's eyes lifted. Without my name, I removed identifying details. He'll evaluate the clinical history first and examine me afterward, if his review supports it. Vittorio rolled the cold glass between his palms. You planned all this already. You told me to find someone who didn't know de Luca. Most people interpret my instructions less aggressively. Most people work for you. Elena gathered the records. I work for your recovery. The distinction landed harder than she intended. Vittorio watched her cross toward the table. And when that job ends? Elena stopped. The room suddenly seemed quieter, filled only by the low ventilation and the soft clink of ice inside his glass. Then it ends. That's simple. She turned. It has to be. Vittorio studied the distance she had deliberately kept between them since the previous night. He understood it now. The warmer their conversations became, the more precisely Elena restored the boundary. Nurse. Patient. Treatment. Nothing else. You said you already looked at me differently. Her fingers paused over the folder. I shouldn't have said that. But you did. And now I'm correcting it. Because I'm your patient? Because you're vulnerable about something deeply personal, and I'm the person standing beside you while you question whether you were ever given a fair prognosis. Elena met his eyes. That makes trust necessary. It does not give me permission to confuse that trust with anything else. Vittorio leaned back slowly. No one in his world voluntarily surrendered an advantage. Elena had just drawn a line that cost her one. So what happens now, he asked. She picked up the sealed records. We find out what your body can actually recover. Nothing more. Her phone vibrated. Elena glanced at the secure message, then looked again. The neurologist had completed his preliminary review sooner than expected. She read the short clinical summary without speaking. Vittorio rose. Elena. She lifted her eyes. He doesn't agree that your condition should have been considered permanently settled. Vittorio's hand stopped against the back of the chair. The clock above the medication cabinet clicked once. How certain? Not enough to promise you anything. Elena locked the records against her chest. But enough that he wants new testing. Vittorio crossed the room and stopped in front of her, closer than he had been since she arrived. Elena held her ground. Schedule it, he said. There's a condition. His gaze sharpened. Yours. Mine. She took one measured step backward, restoring the professional distance between them. Until we know what's medically true, whatever is changing between us stops here. For once, Vittorio De Luca was the man being given the rules. He looked at the space she had created between them, then at her face. Agreed. Elena nodded and reached for her phone. Vittorio's next words stopped her thumb above the screen. And if the doctors tell me those 2 years never had to be lost, he said quietly, then I want to know why. The testing room smelled faintly of alcohol wipes and warm plastic when Vittorio realized Elena had been right about one thing he hated most. Certainty had become his prison. He sat on the edge of the padded examination table in a charcoal shirt and dark trousers, one hand resting on the polished handle of his cane even though he had not used it to cross the room. Elena stood near the monitor while the independent neurologist reviewed the results on a tablet, the blue-white glow sharpening the lines beneath Vittorio's eyes. No guards, no family physician, no familiar names, just 3 people and the low hum of the building's ventilation. The neurologist rotated the screen toward them. Your motor recovery is better than the earlier prognosis suggested. Sensory response is inconsistent, but present. There is no clinical basis for me to call your condition permanently fixed. Vittorio did not move. Elena watched his thumb press harder into the cane handle. Say that again, he said. The doctor did. More carefully this time. The injury had been serious. Recovery was not guaranteed. Age mattered. Nerve damage was unpredictable. Medication could suppress normal response. Chronic stress could do the same. But the word permanent had been used too confidently. Vittorio's gaze dropped to the test results. For 2 years, he had treated that word like stone. Now it looked like ink. Can it come back, he asked. The doctor did not offer comfort. Elena respected him for that. Some function may improve. Some may already be present. We would need a controlled medication review, repeat testing, and time. Vittorio's jaw flexed. How much time? Weeks to months before I'd make responsible conclusions. The answer struck harder than a yes or no. Vittorio stood and walked to the narrow window overlooking midtown traffic. Horns rose faintly through the sealed glass. Sunlight flashed across a neighboring tower and briefly filled the room with white glare. Elena waited until the doctor stepped out to prepare the revised plan. Then she approached, stopping several feet behind Vittorio. You wanted the truth. I wanted an answer. That is the answer. He turned. No. It's uncertainty. You can live with uncertainty. I have buried 2 years because someone told me there wasn't any. His voice remained level, but the cane struck the floor once when he repositioned it. Do you understand what that means? Elena did not look away. It means you made permanent decisions from information that may not have been permanent. I stopped meeting women. I know. I stopped letting anyone get close enough to ask why. I know. I decided I would never have another relationship because I would rather choose loneliness than watch someone discover what I thought I could no longer give. The fluorescent light buzzed softly overhead. Elena's hand tightened around the edge of the tablet. He had never said that much in one breath. Vittorio looked past her toward the closed door. And now you're telling me I may have built my life around the wrong conclusion. Elena shook her head once. I'm telling you that you can stop building around it today. His eyes returned to hers. That easy. No. She stepped closer, then stopped before the distance became intimate, but different. The doctor returned with the medication plan. One prescription would be tapered under supervision. Testing would be repeated. No promises. No shortcuts. Vittorio read every line. Then he did something Elena had not expected. He signed. Not with anger. Not because she pushed him. He signed because the decision belonged to him now. Back at the penthouse that evening, the black medical folder remained open on the walnut table instead of locked away. Vittorio stood beside it while Elena organized the new schedule. "Harlan won't manage this anymore," he said. "That's your decision." "It is." "Good." He watched her place the old prescription bottle into a sealed return bag. "And neither will fear." Elena's hand stopped. Vittorio crossed the room without the cane. His steps were slow, imperfect, but deliberate. "You said whatever was changing between us stops until we know what's medically true." Elena's pulse showed only in the small movement at her throat. "Yes." He stopped an arm's length away. "We know one thing now." "What?" "I am not the man I thought I was yesterday." The space between them felt warmer than the room. Elena looked at him for a long second, then stepped back and lifted the medication schedule between them like a boundary made of paper. "Then prove it by following the plan." Vittorio's mouth almost curved. "Still giving orders?" "Still employed. For now." She arched one brow. Vittorio looked toward the dark windows, then back at her. "Your contract ends in 4 days." Elena went still. He had not mentioned it once since her arrival. "I know. I won't extend it." The words landed like a closed door. Elena's fingers tightened around the schedule. Vittorio held her gaze. "If you stay after that, Elena, it will not be because I am your patient." Edit 4 days later, Elena removed her identification badge and placed it beside the same pill bottle that had started everything. The penthouse was unusually quiet, washed in the amber light of late afternoon, with the distant pulse of Manhattan traffic trapped behind 30 floors of glass. Her navy travel bag waited beside the elevator. The black medical folder lay open on the walnut table, no longer hidden, and Vittorio stood across from it without his cane. "Your final medication schedule is here," Elena said. "The taper continues exactly as prescribed. Your repeat testing is in 3 weeks." Vittorio looked at the badge instead of the paperwork. "You're leaving early." "My contract ended at 5. The antique clock near the bookshelves showed 4:52. "It is not 5. I have nothing left to bill you for." His gaze lifted. "Is that what these 12 days were to you?" Elena's fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Turn gratitude into something else, because you're starting to believe you might recover." Vittorio came around the table. His steps were still measured, but the slight drag in his right foot had softened. "You think that's what this is?" "I think you spent 2 years convinced no woman could want you once she knew what happened." She held his gaze. "Then I walked into the part of your life you kept locked away, questioned the diagnosis, and stayed while you heard there might be hope. That can make attachment feel like something it isn't." His face went still. "You believe I'm confused." "I believe you're vulnerable." Same word in a kinder uniform. Elena flinched almost imperceptibly. Vittorio saw it. He stepped back. That movement mattered more than any argument. "I won't ask you to stay," he said. Elena looked toward the open folder. "Good. I won't extend your contract." "Good. And I won't use money, security, or anything attached to my name to make this decision harder for you." Her eyes returned to him. Vittorio picked up her badge and held it out. The plastic felt cool when Elena took it from his palm. Their fingers did not touch. The same careful inch remained between them, just as it had days earlier. "You once told me you worked for my recovery," he said. "I did." "Then your work is finished." Elena clipped the badge to nothing, realized what she had done, and slowly removed it again. Vittorio almost smiled. She did not. "Goodbye, Vittorio." It was the first time she had used his first name. His breath changed, barely. "Goodbye, Elena." She entered the elevator without looking back. The doors closed between them with a soft metallic hush. Vittorio remained beside the walnut table until the floor indicator descended to the lobby and disappeared. Then he turned toward the room Elena had rearranged around his recovery. Parallel bars by the window, medication organizer beneath the lamp, untouched espresso cup she had forgotten near the sink. He reached for his phone twice that evening and stopped twice. At 8:40, he ate alone. At 9:15, he completed the exercises she had written down. At 10:03, he stood before the locked medical cabinet and removed the key from the door. He did not lock it. At 10:47, the private elevator chimed. Vittorio's head lifted. No visitor reached his floor without clearance. His guard spoke quietly outside, followed by a voice he recognized before he could make out the words. Elena stepped into the room wearing dark jeans, a cream sweater, and no identification badge. No scrubs. No medical bag. Nothing that belonged to the woman he had employed. Vittorio remained motionless. "Did you forget something?" he asked. Elena walked to the walnut table and placed the badge beside the black folder. "Yes." "What?" "A choice." She swallowed, then looked directly at him. "I needed to leave this building once while I was still your nurse. I needed to know I could walk away from your money, your name, this apartment, and the hope I helped give you." Vittorio's eyes stayed on hers. "And now I'm here because I chose to come back." The refrigerator unit hummed softly behind them. Somewhere beyond the windows, a siren moved down Fifth Avenue and faded. Vittorio did not approach her. "Elena, if you stay tonight, there is no treatment relationship to hide behind. I know, and I cannot promise what my body will or won't do. I'm not asking for a medical result." She crossed the space between them until only that familiar inch remained. "That's the point." Vittorio looked down at the distance between their hands. For 2 years, he had chosen loneliness before anyone else could choose it for him. This time, he made a different choice. He turned his hand palm up and waited. Elena looked at it, then placed hers inside. No nurse, no patient, no contract. Vittorio's fingers closed gently around hers. "Stay," he said. Elena did not answer with words. She simply did not let go. At it for several seconds, Vittorio simply held Elena's hand, as if the smallest movement might turn her choice back into an obligation. The penthouse lights were low, amber against dark walnut, and the city beyond the glass had softened into scattered gold. Elena's fingers were warm inside his. No latex gloves, no pulse check, no professional reason for the contact. That difference seemed to reach him more deeply than touch itself. "You can still leave," Vittorio said. Elena looked at their joined hands. "So can you." His thumb moved once across her knuckles, then stopped. "This is my apartment. You know what I mean." A quiet laugh escaped him, unfamiliar enough that Elena looked up. Then his phone vibrated across the table. The sound cut through the room. Vittorio ignored it. It vibrated again. Elena gently released his hand. "Answer it." His expression hardened at the empty space between their palms. He picked up the phone. The secure message came from the independent neurologist. Vittorio read it once, then again. The warmth disappeared from his face. "What happened?" Elena asked. He turned the screen toward her. The medication taper had triggered a temporary increase in nerve pain and muscle spasms. The doctor wanted the next reduction delayed until Vittorio stabilized. No emergency. No proof of permanent damage. But no clean upward path either. Elena read the message carefully. "This can happen. Convenient timing. Your nervous system doesn't care about timing." Vittorio set the phone down harder than necessary. "So after 12 days of being told there might be a future, my body chooses tonight to remind me otherwise." His right leg tightened before he finished speaking. His hand caught the table edge. Elena moved instinctively, then stopped herself. He saw that hesitation. "Go ahead," he said. "Do your job. I don't work for you anymore." "Exactly." The bitterness in the word made her step back. Vittorio turned toward the windows. This was a mistake. Elena's jaw tightened. "Which part?" "You coming back." "Don't decide for me. I'm deciding for myself." "No. You're doing what you've done for 2 years. Something hurts, so you lock the door before anyone can see it." Vittorio faced her. "You have no idea what you're asking." "Then tell me." His breathing slowed deliberately. "Suppose nothing changes. Suppose the doctor is wrong. Suppose tonight becomes another test I fail while you stand there pretending it doesn't matter." Elena crossed the room, stopping several feet away. "Then we don't make tonight a test." He stared at her. "You came back knowing what this could mean." "I came back because I wanted to be with you." Her voice remained steady. "Those are not the same thing." The distinction held him silent. Elena reached toward him, then left her hand suspended between them, giving him the choice. "You spent 2 years measuring intimacy by one function your doctor told you was gone. I'm not going to help you turn me into another medical exam." Vittorio looked at her open hand. Slowly, he took it. This time his grip trembled. They moved away from the medical equipment, away from the black folder and the pill bottle, into the quiet living room where no part of Elena's former job followed them. They talked first, longer than either expected. Vittorio admitted he had forgotten what it felt like to sit beside a woman without calculating when he should leave. Elena told him he was terrible at ordinary conversation. He accused her of insulting a dangerous man in his own home. She smiled. The tension loosened by degrees. Later, when their closeness deepened, Vittorio stopped. His hand withdrew from hers. The old certainty returned to his eyes before his body had been given any chance to answer. I can't. Elena did not move closer. Can't or won't. His gaze fell. I don't know. Then that is the only answer we need tonight. She waited. Vittorio closed his eyes, breathing through the silence. For once, he did not command it away. He did not send her home. He chose to remain inside the uncertainty. When he finally looked at her again, Elena was still there. What followed belonged to neither medicine nor proof, only two adults choosing tenderness, without demanding an outcome from it. Hours later, pale morning light reached across the floor. Vittorio woke first. Elena slept beside him, one hand resting loosely near his on the blanket. He stared at that hand, then at the ceiling, registering the quiet evidence of a body that had responded in ways he had believed impossible for 2 years. Not perfectly, not predictably, but undeniably. Elena stirred and opened her eyes. Vittorio looked at her as though the entire architecture of his life had shifted overnight. He was wrong, he whispered. Elena pushed herself upright. About what? Vittorio's eyes moved toward the black medical folder visible through the open doorway. About enough. His phone was already in his hand. Elena saw the change in his face. Who are you calling? Vittorio stood, his movements deliberate. The hospital. Why? He looked back at her. Because now I know there was something left to recover. His thumb hovered above the screen. And I'm done wondering why Harlan taught me to believe there wasn't. Edit by noon. Vittorio had every decision connected to his recovery spread across the walnut table, and for once none of them belonged to Dr. Harlan. The old prescription bottle sat inside its sealed return bag beside the black medical folder, while winter sunlight flashed against the glass towers beyond the penthouse windows. Elena stood across from him in the cream sweater she had worn the night before, her untouched coffee cooling between her hands. The hospital had answered Vittorio's call with records, not explanations. The independent neurologist had compared those records against the original surgical notes and confirmed what mattered most. Vittorio's injury had justified caution, but not the certainty that had ruled the last 2 years. More importantly, the medication Harlan kept renewing had remained in place long after Vittorio's condition should have been reassessed. So he was wrong, Elena said. Vittorio looked at the folder. Being wrong is one thing. His finger tapped the repeated renewal dates. Never checking whether you're still wrong is another. Elena heard the elevator open behind the closed doors. 2 guards appeared first. Harlan entered between them wearing a gray overcoat, silver hair perfectly combed, his expression irritated rather than frightened. Vittorio had summoned him. No ambush. No investigation hidden behind someone else. A confrontation. Harlan's gaze found Elena. This is about the nurse? Vittorio's chair moved softly across the stone as he stood. Her name is Elena. Harlan's eyes shifted back to him. You dragged me here over a medication adjustment? I brought you here because I trusted you when I was too weak to trust myself. Vittorio slid the independent assessment across the table. Harlan read the first page. His face barely changed, but his thumb stopped moving along the margin. Second opinions are easy when someone else inherits the patient after the difficult part. Did you believe I would never recover? Vittorio asked. Harlan removed his glasses. I believed hope would make you reckless. That wasn't my question. The ventilation whispered overhead. Elena remained silent. This answer had to belong to Vittorio. Harlan looked toward the windows. Your organization was unstable after the shooting. Half the men around you were waiting to see whether you could still lead. You needed discipline, not fantasies about returning to the man you were. Vittorio's voice dropped. So you kept me on medication without reassessing the consequences. I kept you functional. You kept me manageable. Harlan's silence answered before his mouth did. Then he said, you became harder after the injury. More focused. No distractions. No woman close enough to influence succession. No sudden family changing the balance around you. The people protecting your position considered that stability. Elena's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. Vittorio did not look at her. Which people? Harlan hesitated. That hesitation narrowed the mystery without finishing it. Men who believed the Luca organization could not survive another period of uncertainty. Vittorio stepped closer. Names. And then what? Harlan asked. You tear apart everything that kept your empire standing while you learned to walk again. There it was, the price. Vittorio could preserve the structure that had protected his power, except that people inside it had treated his private future as something they were entitled to control and keep Elena safely outside the consequences. Or he could dismantle that protection and risk the authority he had spent decades building. Elena set down her cup. Vittorio, you don't have to decide this with me standing here. He finally looked at her. The same woman who had once placed her badge beside his medication and offered to walk away rather than lie to him was now giving him another exit. Vittorio turned to the guards. Take Dr. Harlan downstairs. No one touches him. No one threatens him. He leaves safely. Harlan blinked. Vittorio, you spent 2 years deciding what kind of life I was allowed to have. Vittorio closed the black folder. You don't get to decide what kind of man I become after learning it. When the elevator doors shut behind Harlan, Vittorio picked up his phone. Elena watched him disable 3 executive access privileges, suspend the men who had authority over his medical security, and order an independent audit of every decision made during his recovery. Each confirmation appeared silently on the screen. Each one weakened the machinery that had protected his position. This could cost you control, Elena said. Vittorio placed the phone down. Then control costs too much. That was the choice he could not undo. He had spent his life protecting power from vulnerability. Now he had sacrificed power rather than let vulnerability be used against him again. Elena crossed toward him, but Vittorio lifted one hand before she reached him. Not yet. Her steps stopped. His eyes moved to her identification badge, still lying beside the folder from the night before. I know why Harlan kept me believing my future was finished, he said. I still don't know everyone who wanted it that way. He picked up the badge and placed it gently in Elena's palm. Until I do, you cannot stay here. Elena's fingers closed around it. You're sending me away? I'm giving up the one thing I want close enough to protect. His voice roughened on the last word. Because if I keep you here while I tear apart the people who built my cage, I become another man deciding your life for you. Elena stared at him across the same inch of space that had once separated their hands. This time Vittorio stepped back first. Go somewhere of your choosing, he said. No guards unless you ask for them. No orders. No conditions. The elevator opened behind her. Elena did not move for several seconds. Then she slipped the badge into her pocket, picked up her coat, and walked toward the doors. Before entering, she turned. Vittorio stood beside the unlocked medical cabinet, alone by choice now rather than by fear. When this is over, Elena said, don't decide for me whether I come back. The doors began closing. Vittorio held her gaze until only a narrow line remained between them. Then I'll make sure the choice is yours. The elevator had barely closed on Elena when Vittorio turned the penthouse into a place where no one could hide behind his name again. By sunrise, the walnut table held the black medical folder, the sealed prescription bag, copies of every medication authorization, and the access logs he had ordered preserved before anyone inside his organization could alter them. Cold blue light from the windows spread across the papers while his untouched espresso cooled beside his phone. Vittorio did not call Elena. That restraint cost him more than any order he issued that morning. Instead, he followed the choice he had made in front of Harlan. No threats, no violence, no private punishment. Every executive who had approved medical decisions during his recovery was removed from authority until an independent review was completed. By afternoon, the pattern was clear enough to end the question that had poisoned 2 years of his life. Harlan had not acted alone, but neither had anyone needed an elaborate conspiracy. A small circle of senior men had treated Vittorio's isolation as useful. A leader without a partner, without plans for a family, without anyone close enough to challenge old loyalties was easier to manage. They had encouraged Harlan's certainty, protected his prescriptions from review, and rewarded the stability Vittorio's loneliness created. The truth did not need another clue. It needed a consequence. Vittorio signed the removal orders himself. With each signature, voting control over parts of his organization shifted away from men who had stood beside him for decades. His phone rang twice with warnings about fractured alliances. He silenced both calls. At 6 that evening, the private elevator opened again. Elena stepped out wearing the same coat she had taken with her the night before. No guard escorted her. No one had summoned her. Vittorio's hand stopped above the final document. I told you to choose where you went. I did. She walked toward the table, her shoes tapping softly across the stone. And I chose to come back. Vittorio stood. This is not finished. I know. Then you should not be here. Elena looked at the suspended access list on his screen, then at the signed orders beside the black folder. You gave up control to make sure no one could control you that way again. That does not make this place safe for you. You are doing it again. His eyes narrowed. Doing what? Deciding that protection gives you the right to remove my choice. The words struck harder because they were true. Vittorio looked toward the open medical cabinet. 2 weeks earlier, he would have locked it. 2 years earlier, he would have locked himself with it. Now the key lay untouched on the table. Elena stepped closer. You told me there would be no guards unless I asked. No orders. No conditions. Because I meant it. Then mean it now. The penthouse fell silent except for the low ventilation and the faint vibration of traffic 30 floors below. Vittorio could command every man waiting outside those doors. He could send Elena away in seconds. At the beginning of his recovery, that was exactly what he would have done. Instead, he slid the final suspension order across the table. Read it. Elena did. The remaining men who had supported Harlan's unchecked authority were stripped of medical, financial, and succession influence pending formal review. Their leverage over Vittorio's private life ended with his signature. Elena looked up. This costs you. Yes. How much? Enough that some of them will never forgive me. And you still signed. It. Vittorio picked up the old prescription bottle through the clear return bag. They thought keeping me alone made me stronger. His gaze moved to her. They were wrong. He dropped the bag into the locked disposal case. The click of the lid sounded final. That was the payoff no diagnosis could give him. The object that had represented his resignation was no longer controlling his future. Elena removed her old identification badge from her coat pocket and placed it beside the black folder. Then this goes too. Vittorio looked at it. Why? Because I am not coming back as your nurse. The words changed the balance between them more completely than any document on the table. Vittorio stepped toward her. Elena did not retreat. If you stay, he said, you stay because you choose me, not because you think I need saving. And if I leave, you do not follow me with guards. Agreed. You do not buy my decisions. Agreed. You do not turn your fear into rules for my life. Vittorio's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Agreed. Elena picked up the badge and placed it in his palm. Then you finally understand. He closed his fingers around it. The last barrier between patient and nurse disappeared with something as small as plastic and metal. Vittorio lifted his other hand, but stopped before touching her face. He waited. Elena closed the remaining distance herself and rested her forehead against his. No command. No rescue. No debt. Only choice. Behind them, the final suspension confirmation appeared on Vittorio's phone. The men who had profited from his isolation no longer held power over his future. The central mystery was finished. Elena felt his hand settle carefully at her shoulder. What happens now? She asked. Vittorio looked toward the black folder, then back at the woman who had walked into his life when he believed its most intimate chapter had already ended. Now I stop proving what I can recover. His thumb brushed once against the edge of her coat. And I decide what kind of life I want to build with it. 3 weeks later, Vittorio stood beside the penthouse windows while Elena watched him read the final neurological assessment without reaching for the cane resting against the walnut table. Morning sunlight warmed the dark wood, and fresh espresso filled the room with a bitter, familiar scent. The black medical folder remained open beside him. It had not been locked since the night Elena first challenged the life he had built around it. The report offered no miracle. Some nerve damage remained. Recovery would continue gradually, and age would shape what returned and when. But the conclusion was unmistakable. The intimate function Vittorio had been told was permanently lost had never been medically certain, and his response after the supervised medication change confirmed meaningful recovery. Vittorio lowered the pages. So this is real. Elena stood several feet away in a soft gray sweater, no scrubs, and no identification badge. Yes. Not perfect. Nobody promised perfect. His mouth curved. You certainly did not. Elena walked toward him. You were difficult enough without false hope. He reached for her hand, then paused as he always did now, leaving the final inch to her. Elena closed it. That small ritual had become more important than either of them expected. Vittorio had spent decades believing power meant removing uncertainty. Elena had taught him that love required leaving room for another person's choice. The independent review had also reached its end. Harlan lost his authority over Vittorio's care and faced professional consequences through the proper medical process. The senior men who had protected the arrangement were permanently removed from decisions concerning Vittorio's private life and medical affairs. No revenge followed. Vittorio had chosen something harder, boundaries that could not be negotiated by fear. He picked up the old prognosis from the folder. The paper made a dry whisper beneath his fingers. 2 years, he said. Elena watched him fold it once. You cannot get them back. No, he looked at her. But I can stop giving them more. Vittorio carried the page to the fireplace. The flame caught one corner, orange curling through the sentence that had once defined his future. He released it and watched the paper collapse into ash. Elena did not tell him what the gesture meant. She simply stood beside him while the fire cracked softly. When he turned, he was holding something else. A small velvet box. Elena's eyes narrowed. Vittorio, before you accuse me of trying to buy a decision, listen. That earned him the faint smile he wanted. He opened the box. Inside rested a simple diamond ring, elegant rather than enormous. I bought this years before the shooting, he said. Not for anyone specific. I suppose some part of me believed there would eventually be someone. Elena's gaze moved from the ring to his face. After the diagnosis, I put it in the safe because throwing it away felt dramatic and keeping it where I could see it felt worse. He removed the ring but did not reach for her hand. I am not asking you to enter my empire. I am asking whether you want to build a home with me outside the parts of it that should never belong to us. Elena's eyes shone beneath the morning light. And when you become impossible, you remind me that you are unpaid overtime. A laugh escaped her, small and unguarded. Vittorio waited. He did not kneel, because performance was no longer what either of them needed. He simply stood before her, a 57-year-old man who had once preferred guaranteed loneliness to possible rejection, holding out a future without commanding an answer. Elena extended her left hand. Yes. His breath left slowly as he slid the ring onto her finger. Months later, the parallel rehabilitation bars were gone from the windows. The medication cabinet held ordinary vitamins and Elena's preferred coffee beans instead of bottles that frightened him. Vittorio continued physical therapy and funded an independent recovery program for patients living with life-changing injuries, built around second opinions, informed consent, and rehabilitation without shame. Elena returned to nursing because she loved the work, not because Vittorio needed her beside his bed. Some evenings, she came home exhausted and found dinner waiting. Some mornings his legs still stiffened, and she let him ask for help before offering it. Their intimacy became neither proof nor treatment. It became private, imperfect, affectionate, and theirs. One quiet night, Elena found Vittorio standing beside the unlocked medical cabinet with the old brass key in his palm. "What are you doing?" she asked. Vittorio looked at the empty lock, then at her ring catching the warm lamplight. He placed the key in her hand and closed her fingers around it. "I do not need this anymore." Elena set it on the table and reached for him. Vittorio took her hand, turned off the light, and walked with her toward the life he had once believed was already over.